Welcome to the Vantage Fit Corporate Wellness Podcast. This podcast is sponsored by Vantage Fit, the all-in-one AI-powered corporate wellness platform developed by Vantage Circle.
Spiritual wellness is all about bolstering the sense of purpose and meaning in life. The crux of an individual's health and well-being lies in preserving the overall balance between the mind, body, and spirit. The spirit, which implies the soul or psyche, and looking after your spirit is spiritual wellness. Spiritual wellness must be encouraged today, as it has been changing the dynamics of corporate wellness. Hello and welcome to another exciting episode of Vantage Fit Corporate Wellness Podcast. I am your host Parishmita, and we have with us today Hema Vyas as a guest. Hema is a renowned speaker on heart wisdom, human consciousness, spirituality, health, energy medicine, and science of Ayurveda. She is an omnipreneurial psychologist, speaker, and mentor. Hema also works with diverse global audiences to bring about an alignment in heart, mind, and body intelligence for optimal creativity, critical thinking, and cohesion. And today she is here with us on this podcast episode to speak on spiritual wellness and its significance in the workplace. Hi Hema, would you like to say hello to our listeners?
Hello there, thank you so much for hosting me today. It's my pleasure to be here.
We are so glad to have you here.
Thank you.
Shall we begin with our first question?
Yes, of course, please do.
So Hema, please tell us about your journey.
Yes, so I'm actually originally Indian, but I was born in Africa and spent very little time in India with my grandparents while my parents set up home in London. And at a very young age, I moved to London and grew up here. So I've had a sort of lovely balance of East and West. Even though I've grown up in the UK, my family have held on to quite a lot of traditional ways of being and living, and my mum comes from a doctorate background, Ayurvedic doctor. All of her family Ayurvedic doctors. And so, growing up, it was interesting because in the West, Ayurveda wasn't really very well recognized or acknowledged at all at the beginning. And of course, in recent years, it's become more and more popular. So for me, my journey has been academic kind of background with psychology and growing up in a Western world and really applying a lot of Western science, but also the traditional wisdom that comes from Ayurveda. But most importantly, I would say that I've grown up deeply, deeply spiritual. And part of my mission in life has been to bring spirituality, to bring heart wisdom to the corporate world, because that is what informs the rest of society about trends, etc. And so, to really, really help people understand that without spirit, without heart, without understanding the significance of those concepts, we're going to be lost, and we've been quite lost, as a whole world. There's been the sense of kind of, people trying to find their way, and I don't think we can do it without really tapping into our spiritual nature, without tapping into our heart intelligence and our heart qualities. And so that's a lot of my work right now.
Absolutely, absolutely. No, Hema, I'm really curious. As you said, like your grandparents belong to Eastern part of the world. They come from India. So I'm really curious about, how coming from a science background, what made you, get into this Eastern concepts of Ayurveda, spirituality? Like, I'm curious to learn about the source of your inspiration. Is it a book, a movie, or a person that inspired you to get into this field?
So I would say it was very much personal experiences. So I'll very quickly highlight a couple of experiences that really, really sort of paved the path for me. So one of them was when I was 14 years old, I had a car accident and I had an out-of-body experience. And my consciousness followed my friends while my body was sort of on the floor, on the ground, where I'd been hit. that was, very validating for me because, of course, I grew up in a family that very much understood eternal life and reincarnation, etc., etc. And so to experience my consciousness step out of my physical body was natural for me. For other people, it was really like, oh my God, that's so weird. But for me, it was like, no, that's natural. That's what I would have expected to happen. And of course, that is what I experienced. Then when I was struggling with science, with my psychology degree, I really thought I'm not going to be able to pass this course because it didn't incorporate a lot of the spirituality that I just took for granted. And it was too dogmatic and too behavioral kind of studies rather than studying consciousness, etc. And so I struggled to actually do my course and to not bring my own personality into it, not bring my own thoughts. And when I did, of course, the lecturers would shut it down and say, no, you can't talk about energy, you can't talk about spirituality, you can't talk about certain things that I believed in so deeply. And I remember one night thinking, I don't know how I'm going to do this, but being quite spiritual and quite sort of religious in my own way. I used to go to a beautiful temple nearby and just pray to give me guidance to God. And one night I had a vision of Shiva, who's, very popular for Hindus.
Yes, Hindu god.
Hindu god, yeah. Mm-hmm. Sitting on the end of my bed and just telling me I was going to be okay. And in that moment, everything just fell into place, and I just knew I had to get my degree no matter what, and trust that there was a reason why I had to follow this path. And it served me really well because, of course, in the corporate world, people like to see that I have a psychology degree, even though most of my inspiration and most of my education and most of what I offer people actually comes from the spiritual background, but I am able to put it into a scientific context, and I think that serves me really well. So I think those experiences really, really helped me have the courage to follow my own heart and to follow my own path and not worry about where society was, because back then society was not really kind of following the sort of footsteps, that I wanted to go in.
Yes. From your personal experience, we can get to know a lot about, it served your purpose, it truly served your purpose. Mm-hmm. But there is always a confusion about religion and spirituality. What you want to say about it? Most of the people, they do not, if you ask them, they don't want to be spiritual, they don't want to go into that part because they think that being spiritual is being religious. So, what you have to say about it?
Absolutely. And I think religion is sort of steeped in dogma. And when we don't understand the significance and we're just doing something because we're being told, by our grandparents, great-grandparents, families, I think it becomes meaningless, and anything meaningless becomes dogmatic, and anything dogmatic does not serve the purpose that it's intended for. And so I think and also, religion can also be very contextual. Some things are really appropriate at a given time. And so I'm not a believer in dogma at all, and I'm not a believer in following religion for the sake of religion. So yes. I don't follow anything unless I understand it and it makes sense to me and it has some genuine kind of almost scientific principles behind it. And spirituality is science. It's ultimate science, but physical science as we know it, I feel, is very much catching up with spirituality. And a lot of what, especially, what I've grown up with, Hinduism, Ayurveda, these are all things that now other people are talking about, and there are studies that prove what we've always known, like meditation, that it does change the brain waves, it does change the coherence between the head and the heart, and that does allow us to have more expansive thinking. And so just because science hasn't proven something yet doesn't mean it doesn't have a place in the world like spirituality. But I think it's about making real sense of it and not really expecting people to follow something if they don't understand it. And so I would like to think that one of my gifts is to be able to explain things in a way that people really understand it. And therefore it makes sense, and therefore it resonates, and therefore they can adopt it in their lives, not because science says so, not because tradition says so, not because religion says so, but because it resonates with their heart and they feel that it feels right and they can make sense of it. And I think that's the difference between pure religion, where you're just following for the sake of following, and spirituality, where, you know, it becomes a part of your own journey, your own experiences, and you embody it. And when you embody something, I think you live a much more purposeful life.
Indeed, indeed. Like finding meaning and purpose of life is a never-ending process. Like looking deeper into oneself and connecting or supporting for the quest of enlightenment. Absolutely. And inculcating positivity, hope, forgiveness, acceptance, joy, and eliminating negativity, such as doubt, fear, disappointment, conflicts, are all a congregation of spiritual wellness. It is what I believe.
Absolutely, absolutely. Spiritual wellness comes from evolving and knowing that truth is not static, that it's ever evolving. And as we grow in our consciousness, truth becomes more expansive, and we suddenly understand, you know, the real nature of negativity, and we begin to dissolve it, and we understand the real nature of genuine positivity. And yes, we begin to cultivate it in our lives through some sort of spiritual understanding.
Yes, indeed. An individual's life may be, full of ups and downs, like running after a 9-to-5 job, taking care of personal health, family, or following one passion. And if you ask a 9-to-5er, they would say that they are not living their lives, and it is because the lack of time and space they get. So it has become so important to encourage spiritual wellness, even in the organization, so that they can practice in their personal life. So Hema, I would like to ask you this question concerning the present day workplace scenario and events like COVID-19. Why do you think employees need to focus on spiritual health as much as physical and mental?
I think, it was a real sort of paradigm shift when COVID hit. For once, literally the whole world came to a bit of a standstill and everybody had to rethink their lives. And I think where, it's not just the 9-to-5ers from my perspective. I would say that, a lot of people, even those people who run their own businesses, young entrepreneurs, which is why I call myself the Omnipreneurial Psychologist, because it's very much about going beyond just business, but to really incorporate spirituality, to incorporate purpose and people and the planet, to be mindful of how everything connects. So I think that what was happening was habit. Everybody gets into a state of habit, and so work became a habit, working really hard became a habit, working long hours became a habit. With the advent of internet and emails, and all of a sudden there were no boundaries. Before, you had to be at work, there was paperwork to be done, etc. And then you grow up in an environment where emails come through 24/7.
The digital era.
Yeah, the digital era just meant that everybody's just working all the time and not really stopping to think, feel and reflect. And so spirituality is really that. It's really about connecting with every aspect of your being, your physical self, your emotional self, your intellectual self, as well as your spiritual self. And the reason why I feel it's so important is when people stop, some people took time to really cultivate a spiritual practice, to really think about their lives and where it's going and meaning and what's important. And that's why we had a great resignation, etc.
Yes.
Other people, I feel, got lost in a little bit of a spiral of feeling lost because their habit was to work, and without work, they were a bit lost. And I think that's why companies need to really, really encourage people to find work-life balance. And work-life balance isn't just about having enough time to work, enough time to play. I think work-life balance is threefold. It's about having enough time to work, enough time to play, but also enough time to do the inner work, to do inner reflections, because ultimately our purpose, each of us are here to evolve. Our purpose is not to work like crazy, save up lots of money, buy nice things and have a good life and, have family, etc. I think our real purpose is to evolve, to really get to know ourselves on a much deeper level. And we cannot if all we're doing is being distracted by life, by survival, by the pain and pleasure principles. We need to evolve past that and to step into a deep inner knowingness. And to be honest, I do believe that that is where real productivity lies. We stop making products or services just so that we can make money. We start creating products and services to really help evolve mankind and to evolve humanity and to evolve the planet. And ultimately, that's what's going to save us.
Yes. Like from your answer, there is this question that came up in my mind. We spend most of our major hours at work. If you are a spiritual person, it will only make sense that you will want to incorporate the same ideals of professional life to your work life as well.
Yes.
So don't you think after all it becomes an act of balancing? Like how employees need to balance both personal and professional life? Are there ways to remain professional spiritually and staying true to your own values at work?
Oh, I definitely think so. I think if we start giving in to the demands of a work life that is very demanding, I think we lose ourselves and ultimately we burn out, and we're seeing an increasing number of people burnt out or burning out because there's just too many pressures, too many demands, certainly from the work aspect. And I think that's where, I really encourage people to meditate. One of my things in life is that I want to do very little or do nothing and achieve everything. And I think that happens when we have a spiritual life. We get more done, we're more creative, we're more in tune with what needs to happen. The intuition is definitely amplified. And in that state, I think we don't have to work so hard as much as work smarter. And I think that's what people need to realize, and organizations need to realize. How can they get people being more productive, more creative, better decision making, less time lost on being not productive, on not getting things done, because that way you still can get and achieve so much and yet have time for other things that really matter. Like a 4-day week is so possible, but it's possible if people are aligned to themselves, they're on purpose, they love what they're doing, they feel valued, and they're working in an environment where they absolutely can bring their best selves to the table each and every day. And that can only happen when there is a balance inside of themselves, when there is time to really work through different things like the trauma of COVID. A lot of people went through different kinds of traumatic experiences. Now, they all sit in our psyche, in our physical body, our emotional body, our energetic body. And people need to recognize that one of the best things that organizations can do is to help employees deal with it, because in dealing with it, you create space, and in creating space, you allow greater productivity.
Absolutely, absolutely. So people often think that, as you have mentioned about meditation, which is also an Eastern practice, if I'm not wrong. Yes. So what they believe is that there is a certain age to become spiritual. But what I believe is there is no age to become a spiritual person. Even if you're at your 20s, you can become a spiritual person.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think we all are spirit, ultimately. So it's just about tapping into that part of ourselves. But, it's understanding why, once upon a time it was related to later in life when you've got more time to reflect. Whereas now, I think the world is evolving so fast that I think definitely the younger generation absolutely need to embody and have some sort of spiritual practice. And, it will help in all areas of life. And that's what's so important, yes.
Hema, you have worked with high-profile clients and businesses such as Google, EY, Bombard, Amazon, Soho House. What do you have to say about the 21st century holistic corporate wellness practices these companies are adopting today? And what is that you have noticed, the most significant thing that you have noticed?
So what I've noticed some companies are amazing. They really, really take to it. Some people in organizations take to it really well, and they recognize the importance. And a lot of my clients have come from my personal work with them individually, which they then take into the organization. But organizations are still really, really quite backwards, especially in the Western world. They're very backward because there's a bureaucracy, and a lot of people at the top still don't understand the significance of spiritual well-being. They don't understand the importance of heart intelligence. They don't understand how a lot of the Eastern practices like yoga, like meditation, like taking time away for a retreat and just spending time deep diving into their personal selves and inner reflection, inner work, working through trauma, they still have to be convinced, and they still don't see the value so easily. Once they see it, they're on board 100%, and once they've experienced it, it's fantastic to work with those people. But I think, a greater majority of organizations need to start looking at this, and they're missing out on a huge, huge advantage. It's a win-win. It's a win for them. It's a win for the employees. It's a win for society. And, it's good for people, and it's good for the planet, and it's good for business.
Absolutely.
And that's what I really stand for.
Yeah. So, Hema, how important it is for employees to lead a mindful, meaningful life, or what we can say is like eccentric life in today's world, especially employees?
I would say it's absolutely essential. We are so bombarded with information. It is literally the information age. We are bombarded with so much information. I think we've lost a connection to ourselves with all of that, because we're constantly being told what to think, what to feel, what to eat, what to do, where to go. There's a constant bombardment of information that is playing on our minds and our hearts. And I think when we're mindful, when we come back to ourselves, when we come back into our heart space and really live from that genuine knowingness that comes from our own unique perspective that is in our own hearts, I think we're going to be able to be a lot happier and to not get overwhelmed. Why do people experience stress and disease and burnout? Because they're not living from that deep place within themselves. They're trying to be all things to all people and all situations, and we can't. And there's something in a lot of social media that makes people feel they have to. And so, like I say, for me, it's really important to help people come back to their hearts, to find their core center, to find that courage, that confidence to be themselves in a world where we're being pushed in lots of different directions.
Yes, absolutely. Most of these people, I don't know about the countries, but most of the people, they are trying to find happiness, meaning, in materialistic things. Yes. So what I believe is, coming back to yourself, you will find all the answers.
Exactly.
Even for these corporate companies or corporate wellness programs, they also need to inculcate and enhance spiritual wellness so that they unlock the creative potential and enhance the resourcefulness of an employee. Don't you think so?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Companies need to recognize that their greatest asset are the people, and if the people are happy and healthy and in a well state of health in terms of physical and emotional, then I think that they're going to get so much more out of them, and vice versa. The people are going to get so much more out of the organization and what it stands for. So again, a win-win.
Yes. Hema, so I want to ask you this question, what is the role of spiritual wellness in creating or promoting a positive work culture or office vibe?
So the role of spiritual wellness for me is ultimately it's a balance. It's the alignment of the heart, the mind and the body. And I know you say heart, mind, spirit and, mind, body, spirit. And really, it's the same thing. Spirit and heart are very interchangeable for me. I think that when people have balance, then they naturally find a way to be naturally happy and content rather than constantly craving more and more material things or more and more success or more and more accolades or achievement. And when there is balance and we know what we need and we know we have enough, that we are enough, that we can have whatever we ultimately need to have a healthy, happy life, then I think that we're able to be more focused and concentrate on how we can be of service and value. And that is really what spiritual wellness is about. It's about what we need to receive from the world so that we can be healthy and happy, and also what we can give in terms of our service, whether, whatever we're doing, whatever job we're doing, whatever service we're providing. When there is balance that comes through spiritual wellness, then I think everything begins to flow and life begins to flow better.
True. It is so true. I went through your bio. I came across the term heart wisdom and I instantly became curious to learn about it. Mm-hmm. So I want to know, what exactly is heart wisdom?
So heart wisdom, in spiritual terms, I would say the heart is a portal to truth, and the heart knows a deeper truth about who we really are, why we are here, what is our purpose, and how we fit into the whole ecosystem that is this planet. So when we tune into heart wisdom, we know what we need to heal, we know what we need to let go of, we know what we need to cultivate, we know what we need to focus on, we know who we are, where we're going and how to get there. And that is ultimate heart wisdom, and I think it's a journey to get there. And a lot of my work is about helping people understand that it is the greatest gift that we have to heal ourselves, to heal humanity. And when we tune into heart wisdom, we tune into the truth of who we really are, which is our spiritual nature, our essence, which is pure love.
True. The true self.
Yes, exactly.
Hema, Positive Life magazine acclaimed you as a psychologist and a heart consciousness activator. Mm-hmm. I can really feel that. After talking to you, I feel that, a sense of enlightenment, that liveliness, I can feel that in my heart, that vibrational energy, it's flowing into my veins.
Oh, that's so beautiful. Thank you so much. This is such a lovely conversation.
So can you suggest us some on-site spiritual wellness activities for the workplace?
We've got less than a minute, but I will say take time to know yourself, and that means reflecting, journaling, meditation, but also working with, a mentor who can help guide the truth of your heart, because we have blocks, we have blind spots, and when we get connected to someone who can help us, I think we find the way.
Coming to the end of the sessions, Hema, how will our listeners reach out to you?
Wonderful. It was a great conversation. Thank you. They can reach out to me mainly via my website, which is hemavyas.com. And I'm also on LinkedIn. That's my preferred social media. I do have Instagram as well, but LinkedIn or my website would be lovely.
Okay. So do you have any thing to share, valuable to share to our listeners?
Yes. So the final thing I would say is that, if you're really, really looking to cultivate health, wealth, love, passion, and purpose, if you really want a really prosperous and very happy life, then I think you have to incorporate a spiritual life, to have sense of meaning, to have a level of discipline with a spiritual practice of some sort, any sort that works for you. There's so many ways we can connect to our hearts and spirit. And I think we just have to find the way that suits us the best.
Absolutely. I cannot agree more.
Thank you.
Hema, you are truly a visionary who awakens new possibilities. I think I had one of the most wonderful and authentic talk sessions.
Oh, that's so lovely to hear. Thank you. I really enjoyed it too.
Yeah,
Thank you.
me too. It was so nice talking to you. It was so nice having you at this podcast episode of Vantage Fit.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Hema.
Thank you for hosting me, and really appreciate your questions. Thank you.
Yes, good day.
Thanks for listening to Vantage Fit Corporate Wellness Podcast. Please do subscribe to Vantage Fit Corporate Wellness Podcast on Apple Podcast, Spotify, and our YouTube channel for new episodes.